Well, Israel's war against Hamas continues. And yesterday, the Israeli Defense Forces suffered its deadliest day since the Gaza ground attack began, when a building collapsed on soldiers clearing terrain for Israelis to return to their homes near the Gaza border. Now, yesterday's casualties come at a time when international pressure is building on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to conclude the war against Hamas prematurely. That pressure is coming also from the Biden administration. Now, given the struggle Israel faces for its very survival, would caving to such pressure and leaving Hamas leadership in place merely enable future attacks? Join me now to discuss this and more is Carolyn Glick. She's a senior contributing editor at the Jewish News Syndicate and host of Carolyn Glick Show on Jewish News Syndicate. Carolyn, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you. Thanks for staying up so late there in Israel.
Oh, I'm always happy to join you on your show. Thanks for having me, Tony.
So our thoughts and prayers are with everyone in Israel. I pray almost daily. I would say I do pray daily for the peace of Jerusalem and for Israel, but in particular yesterday, as you mourn the greatest loss of soldiers there, provide an update on how the war against Hamas is trending and how IDF leaders are gauging their progress.
It's sort of an up and down kind of thing. You're right. We lost 24 soldiers yesterday, which was the most lethal, deadly day of fighting that we've had so far since we began the ground operation in Gaza in early November. Yeah, it's a big blow. It's a big blow to the country. It's a big blow to the families. But the fight must go on because, as you said, this is really a war for Israel's survival. It's not because Hamas in and of itself poses an existential threat. They don't have atomic bombs, and most of the terrorists who came into Israel, invaded Israel, were killed actually while they were in Israel. So we were able to fend it off, a surprise attack. It took much longer than it should have, but within 36 hours, they were all dead or arrested. So, the problem with Hamas is that if they're allowed to remain in place, first they will rebuild their forces and they will strike again because that's all they exist to do. And by the way, they organized the entire society of Gaza and indeed Palestinian society writ large around the sole principle of genocide. They don't have anything that animates them as a people other than killing Jews,
Right.
unfortunately. But that is the way it is, which is why there's really no possibility of peace. But really, if they're allowed to stay, it's not even a question of them regenerating their power, they're rebuilding their forces and attacking again. It's that, George Orwell said that the fastest way to end a war is to lose it. And that's really what Israel is being pressured to do by the United States right now when they're telling us to sue for a ceasefire to get the hostages out without defeating Hamas. And it invites aggression. We have so many enemies that are poised to attack us, whether it's the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, whether it's Hezbollah, Iran's Lebanese Foreign Legion that controls Lebanon, whether it's Iranian-controlled militia in Syria, or even the Syrian military, which is controlled by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. You have Iraqi Syrian forces Shiite forces that are controlled by Iran that have also been moving into Syria and even into Jordan to attack Israel. And of course, the Houthis in Yemen, who have been shooting cruise missiles and ballistic missiles at the port city of Eilat at the mouth of the Red Sea, Israel's southern tip. So we're facing, and obviously the head of it all is the head of the snake is Iran,
Right.
which is moving very quickly towards a nuclear finishing line. And if we don't finish the job with Hamas, what we're telling everybody is that it's open season on Israel.
Exactly. Let me ask you this question. But if Hamas is neutralized, do you see the others backing off, or is Israel reached? Are we at a new phase in this conflict in the Middle East where we're going to see Iran pressing this regardless?
there's always a big question about Iran's war plan. What is it doing? Is it using Hamas to distract Israel as it crosses the nuclear finish line because we're busy in one uh, less existential battlefield because we were attacked from it and then we didn't go after Hezbollah. So there's also a question. We've been drawing down a lot of our reserve forces that have been operating in Gaza. I think we've removed 2.5 divisions of reservists. And we're all happy to get our sons home and husbands and son and grandsons and all the rest of it, but we didn't win yet, and so there's a sense of why is everybody coming home? And one of the assessments is, we need to have them ready to go attack in the north because we have 100,000 internal refugees from the northern border communities that cannot return home until Hezbollah forces have been diminished, because right now they're capable of overrunning the entire upper and western Galilee. And we have to push them back. They have missiles, 150,000 of them pointing at Israel for all ranges. So, this is a threat that we have to remove from the border. And there's a UN Security Council resolution. There's a ceasefire of the 2006 war between Israel and Hezbollah that said that they had to be pushed back north of the Litani River, which is 30 kilometers or around 20 miles north of the northern border with Israel, which is outside of anti-tank rocket ranges that can't be intercepted. So, there's a there is a ceasefire deal that Hezbollah has never abided by, and the goal of any war is to physically remove them from this area so that life can return to northern Israel. Because right now, northern Israel has just become one big military base, and it's supposed to be protecting the communities, but the communities have been emptied because it's too dangerous for people to live in their house, to farm their fields. So it's an untenable situation, and there is no diplomatic option here that can diminish Hezbollah's forces in a manner that will allow Israel any level of security, that our civilians can return to their homes after what happened to the Israelis who live on the border community with Gaza on October 7th.
Not until you neutralize the threat. So Carolyn, I want to ask you this question, actually a couple of questions. I want to get to the pressure the Biden administration is putting on Israel to basically back off. But before I do that, I want to jump to what their solution is. Their solution that they're continuing to push is a two-state solution. But isn't that what we've essentially had with Gaza? I mean, they were self-governing. They've been that way since 2007. But yet that whole time they've been gearing up for what just took place.
Right. Right. No, I mean, first of all, it would be a massive reward for terrorism. What you're saying is, okay, invade Israel, with no provocation, slaughter 1,200, 1,400 Israelis, seize 240, commit acts of genocide, including, mutilation, torture, incredible acts of sadism, sexual violence, do all of those things, and then you get rewarded for it. We're going to give you a state. And not only are we going to give you a state, it's not just that you get Gaza, you get Judea and Samaria, the heartland of the land of Israel, of Jewish history, of Jewish heritage, and a territory that Israel requires in order to survive militarily. And we're going to give you all of this because, as a reward for essentially your crimes against humanity that you carried out against the people of Israel, and you have an entire society organized around genocide. The funny thing is, or the ironic thing is, that the United States is angry at Israel for saying we don't agree to this policy at all. There's no support in Israel whatsoever for this. But it works out, not surprisingly, there's no support among the Palestinians. You have, 88% of the Palestinians saying, no, we don't want a two-state solution. We just want to annihilate Israel.
Right.
That's what we're about. So, there's no the Palestinians want to kill all the Jews. The Jews get it and therefore don't want to give them a state because they'll use it to kill all the Jews. And the Americans are saying to the Jews, you're bad because you don't want to give them a state that they can use to kill you all.
So
You're anti-peace.
let's talk about the Biden administration and what they're communicating to the prime minister and the war cabinet there.
So what the spokesman from the State Department said today in his briefing was, oh, well, we're negotiating now a long-term ceasefire for hostages. And, all of us, I can speak for myself personally, but I don't know anybody who isn't up at night, or if they're asleep, they're having nightmares about our hostages. There's literally not one person in Israel that doesn't have the hostages in their prayers, in their hearts, in their minds, in their tears all the time. But the fact is that you have 9 million people in Israel that are being held hostage right now, along with 136 hostages in Gaza, because if we surrender to Hamas in order to get them out, then there are going to be thousands more. The only difference between the people who are being held hostage in Gaza today and the ones who will be held hostage in Gaza or in Lebanon or in Iran or God knows where tomorrow is we don't know the name of them. We don't know their name. We know the names of the people who are being held now, but we can't sue for a long-term ceasefire because it's just going to make the problem worse. It's going to make the danger greater. And it's a terrible thing. They're forcing us into a situation where we have to choose between impossible alternatives. But that's the nature of fighting, of being attacked, of being hated, of being the target of an enemy that truly, it's hard for us to get our heads around because it's so evil and it's so different from us. They worship death and they seek literally to kill us all. It's right. It's not just in their charter. It's what they say and it's what they do.
Right. It's exactly what they say. It's the words that come across their lips. Carolyn, you've been tracking politics and you know Israel well and the governments and the transitions that have taken place there. Is it your are you convinced that Israel is ready to move forward even if they have to go alone politically?
I think, look, it's hard. We have a very, very powerful opposition in the left. They control most of the organs of state power, whether it's the Supreme Court or the state prosecution, and really the general staff of the army. They're also moved by the public, and you have demand that's coming from the ground up, that's coming from the reservists, that's coming from the families of the bereaved families whose soldiers, whose loved ones have died in battle. You have it from the 250,000 Israelis who are living as internal refugees, both from the south and from the north, that we cannot stop the fight. We cannot end this war with a ceasefire that leaves Hamas in power, that leaves Hezbollah at the border in the north. That allows Iran to be nuclear. People after October 7th, everybody's eyes are open to the danger, and we're a country that loves life, and we insist on surviving. And we understand that you can't compromise on this when it's a zero-sum game. You can't reach it's not like some sort of a conflict resolution postgraduate seminar.
Right.
There is no common ground here. It's either us or them. It's
not the reasonable man theory. You can't just sit down and reason and come up with a solution. We're almost out of time, Carolyn. Is there a chance that Israel may move on Iran? You said the head of the snake. In this environment, might Israel take the head on?
All I know is that in his press conference last week, Prime Minister Netanyahu was asked, is this preventing us from attacking Iran, the war in Gaza? And he said, who said we're not attacking Iran? And there are all sorts of mysterious explosions going on in Iran all the time. You never know what might happen to those nice, shiny nuclear installations they have, and their oil installations and their gas and their gas installations. You just never know.
Right.
Things can happen.
Carolyn, we got to leave it there, but I will assure you that we will continue to pray for our friends in Israel. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.